Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first video in our series where we are going to be talking through Echoes of Wisdom, the brand new Legend of Zelda game. It's Gooey, Corey, and McKenna. You know us. We're gonna be, we're gonna be taking you through the game and kind of giving our impressions of it, and we're gonna kind of try to do it in chunks. So although the game is, somewhat non-linear, you can sort of follow along, and if you want to avoid spoilers, you'll know kind of what to avoid based on that section. But of course, we're all going to stumble upon things differently. So, just with that caveat. With that being said, this first video, we're going to give our early impressions on the beginning kind of intro portion of the game that was kind of in the demos and stuff like that. So nothing too crazy in this first video. So before we jump into it, I guess two things I want the people at home to do. One would be go leave a comment with other topics and stuff like that you want us to cover on the video. I've already gotten some from people, which are great. I think after we're done kind of going through the game generally and we talk about it, we can do some more videos where we focus in on, really specific topics that we're probably going to cover as we go. But, once we're done with the game, we might have our full thoughts on the various aspects like the world, the collectibles, whatnot. So let us know what you want to hear us talk about specifically. Second, leave us a comment. I don't know, maybe we could name this series. We had with Tears of the Kingdom, we kind of informally called it Talkin' Tears.
Talkin' Tears. This could be Echo Chamber.
The Echo Chamber.
That's it. This is episode 1 of the Echo Chamber.
Leave your comments anyways, just in case someone can top that.
But by the time you've commented, Corey, I hope you have a logo for our next video.
Yeah, it's already. Sorry, too late. Write your comments anyways, though.
Okay, but I think we've gotten all that out of the way. We're going to talk about the various aspects of this beginning portion of the game up through the first dungeon of the game. But just first of all, we've all played a little bit farther, and we're going to kind of withhold some of our thoughts. But I guess just in general, let's talk more generally. What is everyone's feeling like on the core, I guess, like gameplay of this? What do you think about you get kind of taught it right away with there's sort of a stealth section in the beginning where you learn about echoes, and for me that was like, it was sort of like okay, nothing, it was fun. I was like, nothing too surprising here because we've kind of been shown this stuff, but it was a good introduction. But once I got out there and started using the echoes and stuff like that, then my feelings started to solidify and grow and change as we go on. But
for sure. Yeah,
Corey, what's your overall feeling on like the echo system and that sort of gameplay loop?
I definitely agree with you that it's like once you go out into the whole wide world and you start collecting a bajillion echoes, because there are echoes all over the place. There's combat echoes, there's like random item echoes, there's echoes that you use for exploration. Once you get out into the whole wide world, that's when it's really like no holds barred. So my early impressions, at least in like that breakout section, there's not a ton of different ways you can use the echoes, but my first impressions were basically immediately comparing it to Link's Awakening 2019. Specifically how like it plays very similar to that, but also you can tell they took off of some of the restrictions to make it feel a little bit more like a slightly up-to-date version of that. Like obviously you have the full 360 range of motion. You have the little, it's a neat little touch with the right joystick. You can move the camera around a little bit just to extend your view.
Always using that, yeah.
And like the dedicated jump button is excellent. I don't know how we were playing Zelda for 30 years not being able to jump. That's wild.
Yeah, you used to have to just get
Um,
Rock's feather or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, you got to get an item for it.
Uh,
No, but it's
mhm.
I like the echoes, and it's funny that you get the old bed so early because that's like the most busted echo in the game. Everyone uses the old bed all the time. I feel like, but
Yeah, it's very necessary.
it's really cool for both exploration and combat. I think,
Yeah.
and combat took a little bit of it's interesting because like it's a slightly different feeling when it comes to combat because you come up to an enemy and it feels a little bit higher stakes because you can't just go and slash your sword at it. You kind of have to think like, what am I gonna do to take this guy out? And it is also really cool because you start to kind of learn like how the different elements of these enemies interact with each other. Like some are armored, some get electrocuted, and some don't. Some burn super easily, and it's like a cool. You can tell they have a cool system behind that.
Yes, it was very much for me. That aspect of it reminded me of something like a real-time strategy game where I think of like Age of Empires, where it's like, oh, this unit is strong against this unit, and like this one is good for taking
Yeah.
down this one, and that becomes sort of a calculated thing. But McKenna, what was your what do you think about the echoes? What did you think initially, and I guess what do you think?
I love them. As far as the non-combat echoes, I love the variety. I love that you can both get kind of creative and have multiple options, but also have points where it's like, okay, I got to do something specific.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And I got to think about what echoes do what. I love that there are some echoes that basically do the same thing but are just aesthetically different. It's a nice little touch. And then with combat echoes, I think the first time I used an enemy to fight another enemy, I was like, I feel like I'm doing a Pokemon battle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it does feel like that.
I think it was like a Keese battling a Keese, and I'm just watching. And I'm like, yep, these are Pokemon.
Yeah,
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. It's fun to the enemies behave differently, so you kind of have to remember like the Keese are a little more like sporadic than maybe some of the birds. You're like, which one would be better in this situation? Or which one covers more ground? Or which one acts faster?
Yeah.
Uh,
You can eventually.
I got a question for you two when it comes to combat, especially like in those early portions. I guess up to and into the first dungeon. Did you have like a go-to echo for combat, or was there a certain few that you would use a lot? Because I would frequently like. It's funny you mentioned keys. I would just like spawn as many keys as I could and just have my little squad of bats following me around and just attacking things left and right. And then the P hat was pretty busted early on too. But one that
mhm.
I found pretty early and am still using it frequently now is the Buzz Blob. I
Ooh,
love the
okay.
Buzz Blob.
See, I feel like the P hat, that was a big one, like a big standout find you can get in like the first initial area. They kind of they
Yeah.
like I feel like they have some good, like each area has kind of its own, like that's the one you want to get. And I did,
Yeah, that's like a little hidden strong one that you can get pretty early on.
yeah. I didn't get that one until much later. What has just been interesting about the combat is seeing how people approach it differently, because you'll see people like I'll see people like do like just the Pokemon battle thing where they drop them down and like kind of let them do their thing. For me, I sometimes do that. It depends. Like I could sometimes it's a matter of like maybe I'll drop a big guy down that costs a lot and let him like focus in on people. Other times it's like I'll swarm them with a bunch of, what one I like a lot. I don't this is not a spoiler one. It's the Club Borblin. It's just like one of the just the level one too, because especially once I get a lot of like I'm able to spawn a lot, they just swarm people like crazy.
I love that.
But then there's a lot of and we can talk about it after we hear McKenna's strategy, but there's often a lot of times where it's like I'm getting in there and backing them up with other things like moving enemies with bind, or even, well, more commonly the sword fighter mode is big for me. It's very fun to kind of like fight alongside your echoes and stuff like that. But yeah, McKenna, what's your strategy? What's your echo strat for fighting enemies?
Sometimes I am using like a small army, but I feel like a lot of times I will like spawn one, let it hit one time because it'll like do it immediately,
Like a charge.
and then spawn it again, so I don't have to wait for it to hit again. I find myself using that quite a bit. Using a flying guy.
That was something too that like I said when we talked to Rod, was that there will be plenty of echoes that are both animate, but mostly like the enemies that will act just as much like using a weapon, like a big one for me is, I think it's, you get a little bit later, but it's like the armadillo ones that we talked about that.
Yeah.
I speculated on that, but there's other enemies like that you can use as projectiles and things like that. And so like the combat is actually quite engaging. Like you can just be like, I'm going to watch, that's fine. Or like spawn, strategize and spawn the right guys. But you can be like, I'm going to shoot 1,000,000 of these guys at you. And it becomes like, well, okay, it's like a shooter game now. That's cool.
That is something that I didn't really anticipate, that I have come to appreciate, is that I find myself wanting to try more strategies than I thought I would.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, like, initially when I saw the P hat in the trailer, I'm like, all right, well, that's what I'm going to use for combat all the time. And I quickly found, like, you can't use it for everything, because there are some enemies, especially later, where it's like, that's not going to do anything, and the P hat's going to disappear. It's going to get hit once and go away. So you have to really find like the things that you like to use, but also it's a lot more like, okay, what's the game plan going into this encounter? Especially because the game brought back those like little enemy camp things where you beat all the enemies and like a chest opens up. So that's a perfect example of like, all right, there's a moblin up there, there's a moblin down here, there's some keys and stuff. Like, how am I gonna, do I want to have one ground enemy and then use the sword fighter mode, or maybe throw a couple keys in and mess them all up first? And then of course like the bond and reverse bind and stuff. I still don't know if that's correct or if I did it backwards there. If it's reverse bond and reverse bind or whatever, but you can, there are like mechanics to use that in combat too. Like you can pull enemy shields away from them, or you can just pick them up and drop them in a hole, or drop them in water and let them drown,
Mm-hmm.
And that's it's the
fun.
best strategy is to do that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is pretty busted. But that's why I like shooting a little buzz blob at them, and it just slowly walks and shocks. But when it shocks them, they get stunned, and then it keeps hitting them. So I basically get it right next to them, and then I either bond the buzz blob or the enemy and just keep making them touch each other.
Ooh.
And it takes a little while, but it, like, especially if there's a group of them, it gets all of them at once, which is awesome.
Sounds satisfying.
I really like that a lot of the areas will have like platforms you can jump up onto if you just want to like spawn your echoes and then stand back away from the action.
Yeah.
So
It's like you're their overlord.
one other thing I like is there will be times where there's like maybe a puzzle to solve or a chest to find or whatever, something to do, and it's surrounded by enemies or whatever. And one thing that I find fun is sort of just like say in the case of a puzzle is spawning like a bunch of my guys. This I guess a little later. Early on you don't have a lot of guys, but I'll spawn my guys and I just will go and like work on whatever I'm trying to work on while I'm like, you handle them.
Well, they distract.
Yeah, and
You send the squad in to reroute the enemies, and then you get to business.
or you can usually tell like sometimes like there'll be a lot of rooms, say like in dungeons, where the challenge is clearly just to get through the room or whatever, and I'm just like I'm staying focused on that challenge and like whatever, and I'm just like dropping keys or whatever, some guys to kind of run defense. In some rooms you can tell you need to kill all the enemies or some screens or whatever, but in plenty of times I'm like, oh yeah, these are some baddies. All right, send out my guys. They got it. I'm gonna scoot right by them, no problem. And it's like satisfying when you're like, haha, got through it without any encounter at all.
I don't know about you two, but when the game first started, immediately I went into the options and turned on hero mode. So I've been playing on hero mode the whole time, which this is a relatively, like, I wouldn't say it's been very hard so far, but I have game overed several times because there are just instances where you get overwhelmed and you just lose health like that. So in that vein, have you guys encountered any like common enemies where you can't figure out how to deal with them yet? Have you found any like problem enemies that you're just like, these guys are a pain, I kind of want to avoid them?
The first few like dungeons the game kind of leads you through, I didn't have any sort of issues like that. It's like when and that was mostly because I felt like I was sticking straight to kind of the path, and then after that I started to get more like, oh, let's check out some of the like, the edges, the margins or whatever, and that's where I'd find more stuff that was giving me a challenge. But in terms of like on the direct path, there's certain encounters and stuff that have been challenging, I've game overed or whatever. Not a ton. I'm not playing on hero mode though, but overall I would say the main sort of path through it hasn't been too tough for me. It's kind of like any Zelda game where it's sort of as tough as you want to make it to be, and if you spend a lot of time doing stuff, making smoothies or whatever, you're gonna be mostly okay. How about you McKenna?
There's like two main instances that I can think where I struggle or was worried about the enemies. We're in more like platformy areas where enemies had projectile attacks, like in the underground and the still world, and that you just gotta run away from that or distract them with your echoes real quick. And then the other point, some certain elemental enemies have been a bit of a challenge.
Oh, big time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I cannot handle Tektites in this game.
Those
you
guys
don't find them until you get a little more towards like the water area, which we'll talk about later, but like especially because it's in a watery area and because it's like typically my strategy depends on how the enemies move. And it's like, are they a ground enemy or are they an air enemy? And that determines what I put.
Or are they in the water?
Jumping around and doing both, I can't figure out how to. Especially when it's a bunch of them at once.
That's sword fighter mode for me.
Actually, honestly, the best when you initially encounter them, that is a little. I remember like the first time I fought one and being like, oh wait, yeah, like that ability to be on the water really changed it. But then once you get a Tektite Echo, you just fight Tektite with Tektite. And you'll be all right. They kind of bounce into each other and like damage each other or whatever, but it works out,
That's why, like, early on that point, I was still trying to send my Keese army, but it's like the Tektites just keep jumping into them and they die immediately. I'm like, these guys, tough.
Plus, the keys, they just go on a path. Like they're
Hmm.
just like, I'm gonna go straight down, and
Yeah,
by that time the Tektite's like, bye. I'm
yeah.
all the way over there now.
I'm
So
all up in your face now.
how about some? Let's talk about, because Tektites aren't in the early area, so sorry, spoilers, everyone. But let's talk about some of the other concepts, like the bond bind, whatever reverse bind situation. What we talked about its usefulness in combat, but also it's like got a lot of fun, both exploration and I think puzzle solutions as well. Corey, have you had much success with this feature?
Yeah, yeah. I'm a big fan. Well, once we talk about the dungeons, or even just specifically the first dungeon, like I like they make you think about the puzzling differently. It's almost like a Tears of the Kingdom type thing, but a little bit more controlled, where it's like there's a solution that you should probably do, and it's with like bind or bond or reverse bind, and that also just gets blown wide open too once you get later in the game, and you can start experimenting with using your different echoes. But even in these dungeons and for these puzzles, it could be something as simple as like you're on this side of the room, the other side of the room is blocked by bars, and it's like there's a switch you have to hit, but you have to, use bond to like move something on the other side. And I think that's a really cool use of like spatial awareness puzzles. It almost reminds me of something like using the magnetic gloves in the Oracle games to like push an orb around a certain area. And I think it's really cool that you get stuff like that from the beginning of the game, because those are pretty strong puzzles, I think.
Big time, yeah. How about you, McKenna?
Uh, yeah, definitely a lot of stuff in there that's reminding me of the Oracle games, which is neat. Uh, sometimes I forget I have bind, and then I'll just be like, "Oh yeah, I can do
Yeah.
this," and it's like, "Oh."
Oh yeah.
Um, but yeah, I like that. Um, I'm kind of using bind, and then I'm able to manipulate the objects by like moving and just having them push into other objects. So I'm like
Yeah.
moving around. I think that's a really cool thing it's got going on. Um, and moving things through water and air, and just three dimensions. This is a top-down Zelda, but it's three dimensions that you're working with
Yeah.
here,
Oh yeah, it really
which is
is.
really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely when you get later, like with some items that like move in specific fun ways, it does become like there's some fun puzzles and stuff like that that come along with that. And to what you were saying earlier about it, like there are times where I'm trying to solve a puzzle, like in like old Zelda mindset, and the solution is, well, first you have
What
to
item
move
do I
the thing
use?
with bind. You have to move
Yeah.
whatever thing you're trying to interact with, which we'll talk
Yeah.
about specific examples down the road. But how about sword fighter mode? We kind of talked about that already, but in the intro you play as Link, and I thought that was cool in general. And just like
Yeah.
you talked about I had that smooth, you could move full movement. Link's got amazing hops and everything. I was thinking like, man, it feels like this feels so good right now. I was like, obviously, like I'm really like it's. I was like, man, I would love to play another like a Link Between Worlds, like feeling game, and this like gave me that, like playing as Link in the beginning here.
Yeah. Definitely.
But the sword fighter mode in itself is I think really cool. Like it makes sense now playing the game, like why you swap between the two, because it changed like the moves for the sake of the move set in both versions. Like they make sense and they kind of need their own sort of settings, I think. You know what I mean? And it's not, I thought of it as like, oh, this is just going to be like a easy mode type thing that you'll have a limited bit of, but the way I've played it, you can keep yourself pretty much full of that energy constantly, and it just is another way you interact with the combat, you know. And like there's plenty of situations where you cannot just go in like sword fighter mode and kill everything, and if you did try to do it, you would. So you have to kind of like be a little strategic about the way you use it, but you can, via many means, you can kind of keep yourself stocked with it and everything. So it's got a nice balance, and I like the way it fits into the game. I don't know, Corey, what'd you think about it?
Yeah, I actually don't use it as much as I thought I would, which is funny because my reservation at first was like, oh, I'm gonna be like, why can't I walk around and slash these guys? And I find myself actually not wanting to do that. I actually, like, I approach a situation and my mind immediately goes to what echoes can I use, because I feel like using the sword is almost like cheating. But like you said, it's not a catch-all. You can't just use it for everything, so you're gonna need to use echoes anyways. I prefer using echoes, I think, and a part of that is just because I don't like the bar going down, because I'm like, no, I'm gonna lose it. I need to make sure that I have it in case there's a really important moment. And I actually do find that I feel like so far, at least in my experience, they try and have you reserve that for like boss fights. Like if you're just fighting a random overworld enemy, you can use the sword fighter mode, but you don't really have to. It's easy to dispatch them in other ways. But I feel like they've done a really good job with the boss fights of like incorporating mechanics and echoes, and then being like, okay, but now is your time to do max damage, so you should probably bust that sword out. One thing I did notice, I might be wrong, I feel like this is the case, it feels like the sword slashes slower than in Link's Awakening 2019, which is a bummer, because I love in 2D games just like mashing the B button and slashing as fast as I can. That's so satisfying. But
yeah, I didn't have to.
You can keep it stocked. You can keep it stocked full, like especially like I think they kind of encourage it when you're in like the still worlds. The enemies just all drop them, and stuff. So bunch. It's I think it's definitely a cool feature. It's not just like a get out of jail free type card. But I mean, it can in certain situations. If you're like, you know what, I just need to kill this one thing. I'll just slash it. It's fine. Like this Keese or something, you know. But yeah, McKenna, how about you with sword fighter mode?
Yeah, I feel like I'm usually using it in combination with an echo. Like either I'm using the echo to distract an enemy so I can like run around behind it and slash it, or something like that. Like maybe the echo is just not doing enough damage. Like, you know, getting its butt kicked. So I'm like, all right, I'll help you out a little bit. I'm fighting along with my friends.
I feel like in some of those tougher battles with like higher level enemies or like mini bosses and stuff, it's almost like you kind of have to, if you realize echoes aren't gonna just get the job done, you kind of have to do that. All right, you distract it from this side, and I'll sneak around over here and try and get it.
Get them from behind. Yeah, I love flanking them and stuff. That's fun. One final addendum to the sword fighter mode is in the intro. You also get to battle Ganon, which was classic and was fun, and it was honestly a solid like mini boss fight.
It's an actual Ganon fight.
Just good to see Ganon back. Really pleased to see.
Guy.
Yeah,
love that blue pig.
But something else is going on, but we don't know what. So we'll get to that later. I have no idea. So we'll probably talk about the exploration a little bit more in our later videos, but in the early kind of area they put you in, like there is some great opportunities to explore, and it seems like I didn't do this, but it seems like you could go like once you're out in the overworld and just do whatever. Like that's what I thought, but I don't know. What was your early game like, Corey?
That's what I did.
Okay, cool.
I just took off. Well, I did. I tried to. I'm trying to remember because you escape and you're in Castletown and then you got to make your way to Southern Ruins, right?
Yes.
Or no, you come out like a cave near Southern Beach, and then you find your way to Southern Ruins. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. After you're captured and you do this whole escape, there's like the cool. Yeah.
I think I had the foresight to be like, all right, you can't do everything now, so you should at least get to the first dungeon first, because it doesn't seem like you have all your abilities. But very early on, I was like, I went into Tears of the Kingdom mode, and that's what I did in Tears of the Kingdom anyways. Once I started getting abilities that I could tell let me do things in weird ways, that's all I was doing. I remember being in Hyrule Castletown, and just like, all I could do was spawn like tables and boxes and stuff, and I was still like, okay, if I put a table here and a trampoline here, and if I time the jump just right, I'm going to try and get up on this tree. And from there, maybe I can get up on the wall early. And like that's the kind of stuff that when I was younger, I would look at, like back in games where it was restricted where you could be, my mind would just be like, man, but what if I was like on top of the trees? What if I was like over there on the other side of that fence that I can't get across? And this scratches that itch of like little kid me just wanting to get into places that like I shouldn't be in the game. And actually this kind of relates to something that you said, McKenna, a little earlier about like this game being, it really is in 3 dimensions. Like the height plays into this a bunch. This game plays a lot like a platformer in certain parts, like definitely in the dungeons, but like in the overworld, it's like is a bunch of different elevation changes, and you can use your echoes, you can use the beds, you can use the trampolines, you can use a bunch of echoes that fly and go up and down. So immediately once I started having the freedom to explore, I was like, okay, get me on top of the trees and let me just walk on top of the trees, on top of the highest point, see what I can see, go where I can go. And it is a little bit like Tears of the Kingdom in that aspect too, because it's just like if you think you can get there using something, then go for it. But it's a little more like, I don't know, because it's a top-down game, it feels different, but it's a similar vibe.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I want to add more to that, but McKenna, what's your exploration vibe, especially early on?
Early on, I wanted to like talk to everyone in the towns I visited, but I think initially after doing like the Southern Ruins dungeon, I was just like, all right, I gotta go to Jabul Waters because I want to see the two Zoras interacting. So I kind of just booked it there and then did all that stuff and then explored a little.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't explore the whole map. I kind of I do one area, then do some exploring, go to another area, do some more exploring, kind of even it out, spread it out.
I think we have like opposite brain when it comes to that, because like when I beat the first dungeon, it's like, oh, you go over to the west in the desert area. Oh, you go over to Jabul Waters and figure stuff out. And I was like, great. I'm getting on top of the trees and going immediately east to the Faron wetlands. And I did a huge loop around and went over to the top and started exploring as much as I could of like the Snowy Mountain area, because I was like, there's something up there. I know there's something up there.
Yeah, no, I did my Tears thing where I kind of stuck to the path for a little bit, and then I felt like I got to a good spot where I was like, I'm ready to explore around, but I'm gonna save more of that for later because it happened after some of the later dungeons for me. But Yeah, that it used to be like cool, like in Link's Awakening when, and you would sometimes see, you know, parts of the map from other parts of the screen, but it really was when you started to look at the map just on the map in the game, or like an actual like illustration where you're like, oh, this is actually like close to this, or this could lead to this.
Yep.
This game, like, yeah, it like allows you, it's similar to how we were talking about how it feels like it feels like the Link's Awakening remake expanded, you know, where you could see in certain areas of the map, but this expands it even further where now you're seeing ledges, and like the game is asking you to, it's daring you often to come and like get up here or go over this, and I really love that part of this game, but I didn't really start doing that till later myself, but now that's something I really like about the game.
Talking about the map, this is a sensation that I have a lot. I don't know, I wonder if you two have it too, but like the overworld feels pretty big. Like it's definitely a decent size, but I constantly would have this thing where I'm looking at the map and I'm like, I'm here and I want to get over here, and I'm like, whoa, that's gonna take a long time for me to explore all that. And then a couple minutes later, I'm at the point, and I'm like, whoa, I got there way faster than I thought I would. Does that happen to you too?
Yeah, the map it's like a good size. It's like bigger. It feels, it feels, and well, I guess we can get, I want to talk about that a little bit more in future episodes, but it feels like a big Zelda game, like a la A Link to the Past, whereas like the Link's Awakening and the Oracles, Minish Cap, they're, you know, they impressively made it on a smaller scale, you know what I mean? But this feels like it's got like kind of that style of gameplay, but in a world like A Link to the Past with other elements from the rest of the series, obviously, like mixed into that. And so it has like a larger scale, but it's like not too large, you know. It feels like, I don't know, feels appropriate. It feels like about the scale of something like the A Link to the Past Ocarina of Time era of Zelda, you know. But like with more free sort of exploration. But I don't know, what do you think about Corey's exploration timeline, McKenna?
I don't know. I haven't thought about it too much. I mean, it definitely feels like quicker comparing it to the last couple of Zelda games, where it's just like, you know, you have the map taking up the same amount of screen space, but it's a much bigger area, so you're like barely moving along.
Maybe that's probably why I'm having that feeling, because it does mix like elements of that kind of exploration where it's like, oh, get over to this point on the map in whatever way you can, but because it feels more like one of those top-down games, I see a point and I'm thinking like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, like it's gonna take me an hour to get there, and then I get there in like 2 minutes, you know.
Mm-hmm.
No, you probably get across the map pretty quickly. Yeah. You mentioned how it felt like a platformer, and I think I really, in these, I have two gameplay things that make me think this too. One is the still world sections are big on this, because you're kind of off, and like a lot of them you're like floating in the air. The vibe is
like
really
actually
cool. Actually,
is a platformer in there, because you can fall off.
Those are fun little areas, I think, because, you know, they'll have little areas you can go and do a puzzle. Like it'll be a mix of things, combat, stuff like that. But like the way you like navigate those areas does feel more like platforming style gameplay. But McKenna, what did you think about Still Worlds?
I I really enjoy the still worlds. They're really funky. Uh, I think Corey, you said, I think it was you that said this. That it reminds you of the like
The
Pokemon
distortion world.
Distortion World.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's exactly
Uh,
like that.
Mm.
um, I'm waiting for someone to do like a dance remix of the music from the Still World.
There's some
Uh,
banging music in general, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so goofy, just like jumping around on the sides of trees and
Yeah.
swimming up and down the water, which is not affected by gravity
Yeah.
there. It's such every time I go in the water in the still world, I'm like, this is so crazy. Like, this is such a cool concept. I love moving around in it.
Yeah, Corey, still world?
It's funky.
Yeah.
I like that platforming aspect of it. It's cool because I think the first one you go in is pretty contained and it's pretty like I guess linear. Because it's pretty much like you got to go from this platform to this one and so on and so forth. But as you get further into the game, the still world areas you go into are bigger, and it's still like you have to explore a full area. And a lot of times the way those ones work, like the regular ones in the overworld, it's like you have to find Try's friends or whatever, which they're hidden in like 5 spots or 3 spots or something. And
Yeah.
you could like go out of your way to do them in whatever order, but it's cool. It's almost like exploring a little like weird world jungle gym where it's like you jump onto this tree and like, oh, I think I could get to that platform over there if I use beds, or I could just follow this path. And I what I like most about the still worlds is the platforming element, because it is, I think that's really cool. I like when that stuff has been incorporated in Zelda games in the past, and I think it's cool that they're kind of doubling down on that now that we have a dedicated jump button and are able to move ourselves around in the world in a bunch of different ways.
Big time. I think the other big thing that lends itself well to this is this game really expands upon the side-scrolling type areas from the previous games, including Link's Awakening and the remake. And I think they feel way more expanded, a lot more going on, full puzzles, and it doesn't, like in Link's Awakening, it's cool because it's like, whoa, like I'm side scrolling. Here, actually, in this game, it's less like shocking, I think, because like you mentioned it, Corey, the gameplay in the overworld feels so like platformy that it doesn't really feel like a different style of gameplay, even though it is, you know what I mean? It's just like a slightly different perspective, but it's not like shocking. I feel like it feels very natural, and like some of the best like sections of the game are some of those side-scrolling parts.
I think that's just like the kind of like taking off some of the restrictions from Link's Awakening and Link's Awakening 2019, because that there are platforming elements in different parts of that game, but when you're in the overworld or in the dungeons, you don't feel like you're playing a platformer. You still feel like you're playing a top-down Zelda game. And then once you get down, like a lot of the platforming elements where it's like you have to time your jump from this platform onto this platform are in those side-scrolling areas in Link's Awakening. But in this, it's because it's all over the place. You're right. It doesn't feel, you're not like shocked into, whoa, I'm playing a platformer now. It's just like the same gameplay, but now from this perspective. And actually, that's I don't know if either of you read that interview, the interview with the developers, but they talked about that and how like different echoes worked. They found serendipitously that echoes that they would think they would work one way in like the 2D section, they did it in the overworld, and it's like, oh, that actually works the same way, and it's still really cool. Like it functions basically the same way.
Yeah.
So I think that's and that also lends to like, because you think of Link's Awakening, And a lot of times those areas were just kind of like waypoints. Sometimes there were enemies, sometimes there's platforms, sometimes you have to dodge obstacles. There usually weren't a ton of puzzles in those areas. Like the ones I can think of are when you get like the fire rod and you have to like melt the ice blocks in a certain way to so that you can jump up them like stairs. And in this, they're immediately like, okay, you have to use your echoes to solve puzzles in here too. You know?
Yeah.
Which is
Very cool.
I love some of the ones where you go in and you're like, oh, I can't solve this from this side, so I gotta find where. I gotta look at the map. Be like, all right, where do I go to get to this other entrance here, so I can solve this puzzle over there.
Yeah.
Some navigational puzzles, yeah.
Love that.
We'll come back to some gameplay stuff, but let's talk a little bit about the vibes, the characters, the world. Because in the beginning of the game, we talked about the intro, but you're also introduced to a lot of characters. You've got the King of Hyrule, Impa. You've got the right and left, and you meet a lot of people down in Suthorn Village as well, which is sort of that's Link's like village that he comes from. I guess
That's cool. I like that a lot.
that is very cool. The people seem to know him, and I like the Link has like this sort of reputation. That's very cool. Like hearing people talk about Link, and it kind of gives like a nice like character to the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Link the Adventurer. But yeah, McKenna, what do you think about, I guess, the vibes of this game overall and like some of the cast of characters that we have here?
I love the vibes. It's so cute and colorful and vibrant, and just like just going into a house and seeing all the decorations that they have set everywhere, and things are placed with intention. And I love talking to all the different characters. I think I've talked to every character that I've encountered. So I've talked to all of the animals, some more than once. Everything, yeah. It feels like a warm hug.
It's a very pleasant game to play. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, while also having like this real creepy undertone. Like, all right, we got these rifts popping up, and people are getting sucked into them, and
We're getting
coming
traumatized.
out traumatized. Yeah.
Including, like, I guess they say Link, right? Link doesn't talk or whatever.
Yeah, I love that. That's his little lore explanation for why he doesn't talk. He got taken away into one of the rifts, and he came back, and he just couldn't speak anymore.
Corey, how about you? What about the world, the vibe, the characters? What sticks out to you?
Vibes are strong.
Vibes are strong.
It's like it almost reminds me of like, which makes sense because that's basically what it is. It reminds me almost of a mix between like a Link's Awakening and a Link to the Past in terms of vibes. It still has like the very cutesy aesthetic from Link's Awakening 2019, which fits super well. And on that note, the NPCs in this game all look so good. There are so many awesome NPC designs. They all look so cute, and they have like shiny hair, and I don't know.
Yeah, they look
aesthetic,
like the little models or whatever. Yeah.
even though it's not the same, it doesn't quite have the same like toy box theming as like Link's Awakening. It's that style still fits with this game super well. And I like part of the vibes. I'll reserve some of my opinions on this until we get into some of the later episodes where we talk more about some story stuff or some of the other areas, because at first it kind of felt very cutesy, very simple story, like, yeah, this is a Zelda game, there's just some stuff going on and there's bad things and you gotta help out because Link's gone. But like, I'm already starting to find moments where I'm like, oh, whoa, that's pretty crazy. Or things like little plot twists happening where I'm like, okay, all right, I see what you're doing. And part of that has to do with the fact that we're playing as Zelda, as the main character for the first time in a main Zelda game. And I think there's a cool dynamic to having Link be a character, a full-blown character in the game. Because like you can still bounce a lot of like the traditional stuff off of Link, but apply it to Zelda. And I don't know. I just like how like Link is his own character. He's from this village. He's still the Link we know, but now he's an NPC. Well, no, you play as him, I guess, so he's not an NPC. But he's a full blown character in this game, and it's not the person that we're playing as,
Right.
which is neat.
Yeah, the story for me, like in this early section, I mean, just in general, the story is cool. Like I'm digging it. I'm kind of on the same level as like most Zelda games, where I'm just like, it's it's like a simple, nice little story, and then there's like some really sweet moments that I'm really like, aw, but it's not like what's the right word? So far, it's not been like life changing necessarily, but the game is so fun, and the story it's well done. You know what I mean? It's like any other of the great Zelda games. Like for me, the story, honestly, I mean, so far it seems like actually one of the more solid ones. But that's not necessarily what I come to the game for. But I don't know, McKenna, were you gripped by the story right away?
It was it didn't go like super in depth at first, and I think you get some more details later. I do think it's pretty early on that you find that these rifts aren't a sudden occurrence. Like they've been happening for a while, which was interesting to me. I was like, oh, this is something they've been dealing with. And it's just getting worse. Like I think there's someone that says like, oh, they got swallowed up by a rift before I was born or something like that. I was like, oh, it's really been going on for a while.
Yeah, like
that's a cool. That's kind of once they get into it more of like the dynamic of Tri and like Tri's friends and their role and how you actually like repair the rifts and stuff. It's cool that it's like it feels a little bit like this is how it's been going on in this world already, and you're just getting into a certain point where it's starting to get out of control. But like I guess for this early portion, I was kind of at first I was like, okay, these kind of just feel like little set pieces in a cute Zelda story, nothing mind blowing. But I do like that as I'm progressing, it's starting to catch my interest a little more than it did in the beginning.
Yeah, and like there's a lot of like thematic connections between the different parts of the game and stuff that work really well. And you mentioned Tri. Tri is like a cute little companion. I like the sound that Tri makes a lot.
It's a very cute sound.
Very, very calming. Yeah. Okay. So I think we can end this off. We'll talk a little bit about the Southern Suthorn temple. So I don't have many like notes or anything for this. But different areas of the game kind of do this differently. Like some of the dungeons we'll talk about, I feel like kind of give you all the tools beforehand. But the Southern Temple has an echo that you learn in it that feels as close as you can get to like a dungeon item in a game. At least I think you learn the Strangula echo in this dungeon. That's where I got it, I'm pretty sure. And that was like a massive game changer. I don't use it as much anymore, but like, it was super useful in this dungeon. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Overall, McKenna, what's your impression of Southern Temple? What'd you think about it?
Yeah, I think it was a good first dungeon. It's pretty it's simple, but
Mm-hmm.
it's return to classic top down Zelda. With a twist.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Strangula guy is very cool, very fun to use. Um, there are some fun bind moments.
Having a bind moment. Yeah.
Yeah, having a bind moment. I think the shield, pulling the shield off.
Oh
That
yeah.
was that was really cool.
Yeah.
I was like, what do I do in this room? And I was like, can I pull the shield off?
Mm.
Did it. Very cool moment.
Yeah, that is really cool. That is pretty nice. I think, and we've talked a lot about dungeons. This
Mm-hmm.
is like, I think this serves its purpose best as an intro dungeon, because we've also talked specifically about intro dungeons and like what they're supposed to do. And I feel like this does a really good job of introducing you to some of the mechanics and showing you how puzzles are going to work in dungeons in this game. I don't think the dungeon as a whole really blew me away or anything. It's not, it wasn't super memorable, but like kind of like what I said before, the a lot of aspects of what I like about dungeons when it comes to like navigational puzzles, that's not really there at all in this dungeon. But it
Sure.
is like you go to this room and it's a clever little puzzle. And you go to this room, you learn a mechanic. You go to the next room, it's a clever little puzzle using that mechanic. So I do appreciate that, and I think it does a good job of being an intro dungeon. Just to
Yeah.
kind of, because if you, for someone who, because I could see someone not really fully wrapping their mind around being able to use echoes and when to use the sword fighting and when to use bind and bond. Even we forget to use those sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So I could understand someone being like, I have so many options, I'm a little bit lost. And I think this dungeon does do a good job, at least, of being like, hey, here's a puzzle, think of what you can use, and teaching players in a good way. And it's got a cool boss and a cool mini boss.
Yeah. Just in terms of the getting around and stuff, one thing that I think a few of the dungeons that I've played do, and this one has that too, where it'll have the map and it'll be like in a room you're like passing by or something, but it's always it'll be like teased to you, and it'll have a sort of like unique puzzle related to whatever element or something there is. And I sort of like that. Like, obviously there's a lot of goodies and stuff you can get. It's like you get some like butter or whatever. But
Yeah.
it is cool to like, tease the map that way and like build like a unique puzzle around it. And you know what? You could probably be okay without it, but mini boss. I mean, the mini boss was cool, and like McKenna mentioned, with you're sort of prepped for it a little bit with the puzzle beforehand. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
what do we think about the mini boss?
Love fighting Link.
Yeah,
It's so scary. It's so exciting. But that was also one of the first moments in the game so far where I was like, my regular echoes, the way I've been doing this, aren't gonna work. I really gotta. That was one where I felt very much in danger, and I was like, all right, I have to distract him, and then try and get around the corner, and then do something from behind where he doesn't notice me.
Hmm.
It's cool though. Very cool.
yeah, he went down kind of easy for me, but
Really.
I think he's not supposed to be too tough at that moment.
He was pretty tough for me. I think I might have died. I was playing on hero mode too.
Yeah, and like the enemies do a decent amount of hits.
Yeah.
Even without hero mode. But McKenna, what did you think?
It's like it's so strange fighting Link. Like it's fun, but it's like, oh god, this guy who's usually saving the world, I'm just fighting him right now, and it's he's using all his tricks, and you're like, all right, I I gotta use his weaknesses that I am familiar with from playing Zelda games. I love that he powers up to blue tunic Link.
Oh, that's so scary.
I'm like, ooh. I thought he was gonna turn into red Link before the end of it, and I was like, oh my god, I still have more to.
It gives off like Shadow Link kind of vibes, you know,
Yeah.
when he shows up and you're like, this little stinker.
Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, the boss, you mentioned the boss, the Seismic Talus. That was a really fun boss. Yeah, you mentioned sort of like the sword fighter mode being more useful in some of these boss fights. I think they might even, do they give you some like gems or whatever?
Yeah.
Like they'll give it
They
to
have
you.
little ones pop up just in case you ran out, kind of.
I kind of like that because you can approach the bosses from that angle, but you can actually beat a lot of them using echoes, which is pretty fun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I like that because I kind of do like, I fought them mostly, the bosses that I fought mostly like, okay, what's kind of the, learn the strategy. Oh, this one requires an echo. Okay, let's do that. But then, I fought them again or whatever, trying echoes and stuff. And especially with certain ones, it's like fun to watch, like, oh, this echo just totally like dominates this boss. But yeah, what McKenna, what do you think of Seismic Talus?
Cool guy.
Cool guy.
Cool guy. Cool guy.
Yeah, he gave like, bongo vibes, but it wasn't like the same format, which is cool.
I don't know if I would classify him as a bongo like, but he's in the he's in that he's like a
got
cousin. He's a distant cousin.
Yeah.
He's got big hands.
He's a bongo in my book. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a bongo.
Yeah, good first boss.
Yeah. I
Sort of
greatly
first
enjoyed it.
boss.
I liked I think I was still employing that kind of like distraction tactic rather than using the echoes to do damage, because it's like that little sphere is his weak point. I was like I'm pretty sure you can bond it or bind it,
Yeah.
Yes.
pull it away.
It's like a
So
flux.
that's what I was. Yeah, that's what I was doing.
That's what I did, but I'll save it for later. But I had a encounter, like I did an encounter against him where I employed a different strategy, and it was like, whoa, okay. But yeah, I think that about covers it for now. Is there anything else we wanted to say about the early game portion? I think like it was really fun for me, and it so far I'm like really pumped to keep playing more of the game. Like it's the main thing I want to do when I'm not playing it.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it sticks the landing. But any other final thoughts, Corey, that you have?
Yeah, I'm liking it a lot. All the gameplay so far is just gameplay loop. It's scratching the itch when it comes to exploration and puzzle solving so far, and I still have plenty left to go. So I'm kind of in that boat of like, all right, now I want to see where the story goes. I want to see how crazy the dungeons get. I want to start using some of these wild echoes that I've accumulated.
Yeah, how about you, McKenna?
There have been a couple like little escape sequences. I think they kind of occur throughout the game, but there are a couple early like escape the rift ones, and I think those are super fun. I love a good escape sequence in a game. It's exciting, a little scary. I think they're a lot of fun.
Yeah, those have all been cool. Nice little additions, and like the little scenes, the little moments, great kind of set pieces. Love it. Well, cool. This has been episode 1 of the Echo Chamber.
Echo Chamber.
Leave a comment if you like that name or if we should change it to something else. But yeah, it was great to talk about it with the both of you, and we'll be back for some more. We'll talk about more of that world and more of what we've done in the next one. So see you later.